I think people should be prosecuted for engaging in plans to overthrow our government. That's kind of
that's a very loose definition of plans to overthrow the government.
Y'all don't seem to be that informed.
Wait, Luke, respectfully, I cover a lot of protests and riots. A lot of people try to protest and riot and occupy government buildings. Do you think that qualifies as trying to, overthrow your government?
No.
Okay, good. So, I mean...
but if they had a plan to take control of the government, which was this one.
If this was an actual plan, this was the leastly poorly, most
over the government?
ridiculous plan ever. They went after people for having Lego sets of the Capitol. Yeah. I mean, the level of political prosecution here, would you even admit that there was some level of politics when it came to the prosecution of the J6ers? Would you say politics played a role in this?
Engaging with this as thoughtfully as possible, not trying to grandstand. Of course, often, for very justifiable reasons, prosecutors will try to make an example of someone who, for example, tried to overthrow the government to prevent the peaceful transfer of power.
In today's video, Luke Beasley absolutely destroys Tim Pool and his buddies about January 6th and the political climate on the Tim Pool podcast. Luke Beasley really nailed them on Trump's responsibility for inciting the January 6th insurrection. He pointed out that Trump not only pushed the big lie about a stolen election for months, but also encouraged that crowd to march to the Capitol, knowing fully well the potential for violence. So let's dive in and watch how Luke Beasley shuts down Tim Pool on the Tim Pool podcast.
I see why such a thing,
personally, I reject
categorized as sedition,
overthrow the government,
would be uniquely bad to prosecutors and political in that this all involved politics, right? And thus,
I'm sorry, I have to say this: sent. The Wikipedia article making those claims is not citing any actual proof that they said those things.
Because we're harping on these pardons. Pardons are obviously an interesting political, constitutional quirk that presidents are able to do that. It really does undermine the law in our country. But Biden's getting a lot of pushback for clemency that he granted for the Cash for Kids judge who was responsible for sending something like 2,000 children into a Pennsylvania jail, a private prison that he was getting kickbacks for. Do you think that was worse than any pardon Donald Trump could give to any January 6th rioter?
What?
Have you heard of this judge that Joe Biden granted clemency for? A judge who was responsible for sending thousands of teenagers to prison for, otherwise misdemeanor charges while he was getting kickbacks for. Joe Biden was getting a lot of pushback for this because
I've been agreeing with a lot.
So have you heard?
I'm not going to make
this guy specifically.
I've heard of that, but I'm not as read in on it as I should be to speak on it. But
I wonder if
I was more focused on just because it was the big story, and I wanted to again advocate principle. His Hunter Biden pardon, which has been the topic of discussion pardon-wise for us mostly.
Yeah, it was funny because you were telling us a little bit pre-show that you actually had a first-hand experience with Hunter Biden. I don't know, can you tell us anything about your experience firsthand with?
Yeah, just at the holiday
and
party.
The myth, the legend. Yeah.
Yeah, I knew somebody at the White House who invited me to the White House party, the holiday party. Hunter Biden was there. I found it kind of strange.
I feel like
what was it? I'm sorry. What was his reception?
Right, dude. Who cares? There's that saying that if you're not liberal when you're young, you have no heart, and if you're not conservative when you're old, you have no head. But the interesting thing about it is, like, what we define as conservative or liberal are amorphous, right? So, like, what does it mean to be conservative? Who wants to try and explain what conservative is?
Traditional, hierarchical, individualistic are the general ideals that it trends towards.
What does liberal mean?
Like Enlightenment ideas, vaguely. Free speech, God.
And then why is it that the colloquial liberal are the authoritarians in this country?
Because they're not liberals. Because Rush Limbaugh in the 90s ruined the word liberal.
So, like,
I obviously disagree with that, but
so lockdowns. Let's try lockdowns. We'll start there. Government lockdowns were largely a liberal phenomenon.
Well, initially it was right and left.
Initially, it was Trump
supported too
for 2 weeks, and then
it was more than 2 weeks.
No. The initial thing was 2 weeks to slow the spread.
Oh, yeah.
And that was Trump who did that. And then it resulted in basically everybody locking down, but it was the right that ultimately started letting up. And so you ended up with vaccine mandates, mask mandates, which shifted largely into a liberal.
Yeah.
That's why I say left instead.
Agreed.
So that became the authoritarian faction. The left adopted that one.
But then, like, what do you say about Trump talking about going after the media outlets he doesn't like or
suing them? That's allowed.
Whenever he said... Oh, no, I know it's allowed. You agree, though, that like him saying the government, this was a quote on True Social you pulled up, should come down hard on MSNBC?
What's wrong with that?
That's fine to you?
Right out of the gate, Luke Beasley was absolutely correct to push back on the ridiculous minimization of January 6th. This wasn't a random protest that got out of hand. It was a violent attempt to stop the peaceful transfer of power after a fair election. Multiple court documents, testimonies from Trump's own aides, and even Republican officials have confirmed that Trump and his allies deliberately spread false claims about the election, which directly fueled that riot. Luke Beasley brought up the key fact that more than 1,300 people have been charged so far, with many found guilty of serious offenses like assaulting police officers and seditious conspiracy. That's not tourism, that's a coordinated attack on democracy. And let's talk about this claim that the prosecutions were political. Prosecutors often do try to make examples out of people who threaten democracy because that's literally their job, to deter future violence and uphold the rule of law. It's not politics, it's protecting the foundation of the country. When they try to deflect with Hunter Biden and random distractions, Luke Beasley kept pulling them back to the point. Trump encouraged this mob, told them to march to the Capitol, and even refused to call them off for hours while lawmakers feared for their lives.
That's not authoritarian. To me, whenever
not,
presidents want to wield governmental power to go after outlets they don't like their coverage of,
Well, we have laws,
that's pretty
though.
authoritarian.
What do you think about Stephanopoulos defaming Donald
Well,
Trump?
let's not segue off of the question he just asked.
He didn't defame him.
So when
We'll love to talk about that, by the way.
when Trump says there are we have civil liability issues pertaining to defamation and the media, yeah, you sue them. And if the government is an aggrieved party through defamation, then they should sue them.
Yeah, I know y'all
MSN
would be losing your absolute minds if Biden was out saying the media, like Fox News,
I wouldn't be.
criminals.
I assure you a lot of
Come down
Trump
hard on
supporters would
Fox
be.
News.
100%. Yeah.
And
Yeah,
so
I
saying
wouldn't be.
That's an authoritarian impulse to want to punish not outlets that I don't even know what the justification would be, but it's all about people who have wronged him. And if you disagree with
Well,
that, I think you're obviously staring in the face
I'm
of
not
facts and
saying
going,
that aggrieved parties should have no recourse, be it the government or otherwise. So if the federal government is lied about by the New York Times,
Do you think Ann Seltzer deserves to be drained of her funds by Donald Trump?
I never said I agree with that.
Right. So he's doing it to.
He's allowed to file a civil lawsuit.
He's allowed legally. I'm saying
Right.
it can
It's a
be,
personal
you can
lawsuit.
act in an authoritarian manner.
Okay, well, this is very different from like
no,
taking
no.
people's jobs away unless they get a medication.
Well, yeah, those were the individual jobs. The jobs were doing that.
Under government mandate, Biden issued a mandate that a company
He's
with
never
more than,
said- yeah, his
companies with more than 100 employees had to do it.
Or
Tried to use
masking.
or
OSHA
else.
to make it happen.
Or masking. It was always an option. You were never forced.
Well,
They
they
tried to use OSHA to make it.
yeah, they required that if you had more than 100 employees, you were forced to issue vaccine mandates.
Or masks.
Sure, pick one.
Yeah.
The government forced every company to do this.
Yeah, and the government has all sorts of mandates for safety. And
OSHA has no authority to do anything like that, and the Supreme Court found it. Agreed.
Listen.
You know,
I'm totally
you could
fine if this is
disagree
your
with it.
argument. That's fine.
I'm just saying that
if you think that filing a defamation lawsuit is comparable to the government mandating
I'm
everybody
saying
engage in a
there's
medical
nothing
practice,
more
fine.
authoritarian than saying we should terminate the Constitution because
When did he say that?
election lies pulled up on True Social, the MSNBC comment.
First off, Luke Beasley absolutely nailed it when he called out the hypocrisy around authoritarianism. Tim's crew was in a frenzy defending Trump's threats to media outlets he dislikes, framing them as just civil lawsuits or recourse. But let's be real, when a sitting or former president suggests the government come down hard on media organizations because they criticize him, that's classic authoritarian behavior. You can't wrap that up in legal recourse. That's an open attack on freedom of the press. Luke was spot on when he pointed out that if Biden had said something even close to what Trump did, calling for Fox News to be crushed or for conservative journalists to be sued into oblivion, these same guys would be screaming about tyranny and government censorship. And he's right. It's not about protecting free speech for them, it's about protecting Donald Trump. Plus, let's not forget, January 6th wasn't just a chaotic protest. There were explicit plans, including paramilitary-style groups breaching the Capitol, targeting lawmakers, and chanting about hanging the vice president. Over 1,200 people have been charged, with top Proud Boys and Oath Keepers convicted of seditious conspiracy. These aren't tourists. These aren't random troublemakers. They were part of a coordinated effort to stop the certification of a democratic election, the cornerstone of American democracy.
He talked about
We went over this one with Shank on the Terminate the Constitution, and I'll give.
Yeah, don't defend that. It's just It's just like you don't. The Constitution shouldn't be
He
terminated.
didn't say that.
Pull it up, please. A massive fraud of this type and magnitude allows for the termination of all rules, regulations.
We went over this with Jack, and I know that you guys have a tribal reason why you're going to oppose. You're not.
No. I think there's just few things that are so succinctly an embodiment of someone's lack of dedication to our Constitution. So
Let me ask you a question.
Him thinking Ann Seltzer.
Let me ask you a question. If I said the overturning of Roe v. Wade allows for women to be put in bonnets and red dresses and forced to be impregnated, am I calling for them to be?
Yeah, you're alluding to that being, yeah.
So when the Democrats literally said that, you were saying,
that's the argument?
so you agree that the Democrats want to put women in bonnets?
No, I understand that you can both make an argument that we live in some dystopian reality where this is the case.
So here's my point.
But Trump earlier in the
when-
message was talking about overturning the election. He was saying he would be the one by the mechanism of terminating the Constitution.
So this
overturn
is
the election results.
I'd call this the Covington effect. When was that the kids, the Covington kids, or the Sandman effect? Trump said, "Do you throw the presidential election results of 2020 out and declare the rightful winner, or do you have a new election? A massive fraud of this type and magnitude allows for the termination of all rules, regulations, and articles, even those found in the Constitution. Our great founders did not want and would not condone false and fraudulent elections." I'll give you. We talked with Jenk about this a couple weeks ago.
Please tell me, please.
Yeah.
Are you saying he wasn't obviously saying that we've gone so far because of his lies? You agreed those were lies
What lies?
about the election.
Which ones?
How millions of votes and Dominion was flipping and all these things.
Did Trump explicitly say Dominion flipped votes?
Yes.
Then that's not true. Yeah, that was wrong.
Okay.
Well, there's a difference between being wrong and lying. And I'm not here to assert that I can read anyone's mind.
Okay, but there were times that the people around him heard him say, like, "Can you believe I lost at this?"
Who
guy?"
said that? Oh my gosh! I mean, come on, like, dude,
AIDS.
you're making a lot of statements of fact, and I'm asking you just be like, hey, like, who claimed?
Okay,
Trump
fine.
said-
He accidentally made a bunch of false statements, and it led to
No, he
terrible,
lies.
terrible
I
things.
think Trump lies a lot.
And even if you thought the election was unfair, trying to do the fake elector scheme, all those things, none of it's justifiable. That
This is
so
Scott,
authoritarian.
Scott Adams
it's
calls
so
this
authoritarian.
right. Scott Adams calls this what is it? One screen, two movies effect.
That's shock. Yeah, you're shocking. That's crazy.
I mean,
I don't think we're allowed to. I mean, with the masking, that wasn't an option, though, wasn't it? Just like you had to get the vaccine.
couldn't even-
I don't remember.
You couldn't even go get food. But in this regard, this is a really, really great example of the one screen, two movies. Now, I have no problem saying I totally understand why you believe what you believe, right? I also think that this country is deeply pitted against, it's two factions that are deeply pitted against each other that can't actually understand the phenomenon at play. That is, nowhere in that statement did Trump say, we must terminate the Constitution. You interpret it as such. That's it.
Yeah, that's the
Does it say we must terminate
crazy
the Constitution?
bending over backwards way.
Where- does it
well,
say
actually,
that?
the reason
does
that
it say
I
it?
It's just a different interpretation. It's,
It's
not
not.
crazy.
It's not.
It's
You don't
not
say the
crazy bending
election-
over backwards. You're putting the
you don't
context
say
over it.
false statements about the election and then say we should do something that's not constitutional, which is throw an election out months and months after it happened, and then go, by the way.
Now, Tim Pool and his crew did every possible mental gymnastics to spin that, saying, oh, it's a metaphor, or it's just rhetorical, or even it's just an interpretation. Sorry, but no. When you're a former president and top contender for the next election, casually suggesting tossing out the Constitution isn't a hot take, it's authoritarian. Period. Luke Beasley hit the nail on the head when he pointed out that even if you believed Trump's lies about the election, that still doesn't justify attempting to overturn a democratic election or pushing a fake electoral scheme. Trump's own top officials, from his AG Bill Barr to his cybersecurity chief Chris Curbs, have all confirmed there was no widespread fraud. The crew also tried to pull some classic whataboutism about what about Democrats saying women would wear bonnets after Roe v. Wade. Nice try. But that's a hyperbolic warning about consequences, not a call to literally change the legal framework of the nation. Comparing that to a direct call to terminate constitutional rules is a false equivalence. Another crucial point Luke Beasley could have emphasized: Trump's comments weren't made in isolation. They were part of a broader strategy that included pushing the DOJ to just say the election was corrupt, trying to pressure state officials to find votes, and orchestrating the fake electors plot. This wasn't rhetorical flair. It was part of a multi-step plan to hold on power.
Pause. Are you getting tired of getting half the story from biased news sources? One outlet says one thing and another says the complete opposite. How are you supposed to know what's actually true? That's where ground news comes in. It lets you compare how different media outlets, left, right, and center, are covering the same story, so you can see the full picture instead of just the echo chamber. And here's the best part. Click the link in the description and get 40% off the Vantage tier, which gives you even deeper insights into media bias and political trends. Stay informed, think for yourself, and check out ground news in the description down below.